Hello and welcome to episode 39 of the Alfa Romeo Driver Podcast, brought to you by the Alfa Romeo Owners Club. I'm Guy Swarbrick, and logged into Zoom this afternoon I have Club Chairman John Griffiths, Club Manager Nick Wright, and Board Member David Faithful to talk about the busy summer of events that we're quite literally in the middle of. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Guy.
So it's been a busy old summer and looks like it's going to keep getting busier. Lots of events coming up. I don't know where to start, really. I guess the first one chronologically is probably the Silverstone Classic, which we had a big club presence. How many cars did we actually have there, Nick?
Yeah, there's 50 booked for each day, so that's good.
Yeah. And a few days of entertaining racing. The weather was absolutely appalling. I know I spoke to a few of the guys on Sunday who were parked up in the display area and getting very, very soggy. But Sunday was actually nicer than Friday. I don't think I've got as wet as often photographing a race as I did in the qualifying for the Adrian Flux historic touring cars. There was literally water pouring off me. Ended up with condensation and water dripping down the inside of the front element of my big zoom lens, which is quite an achievement.
That's never good.
No. And we talked to Jeff Gordon on the last podcast about his exploits in his Alfa Sud Sprint, which I think went better than 2 years ago, but not as well as he would have liked. Qualified quite well, and then water got in the electrics, which is unusual on an Alfa Sud, isn't it? So he developed a misfire and did a couple of pit stops. But there was quite a lot of Alfas there. There was a couple of Giulietta Sprints and one Giulietta TI, I think, and a single seater, a Cooper Alfa, which was quite a fun sight to see. But just nice to be, despite the weather, out with lots of people and watching Alfas on the track.
I remember a very wet Silverstone Classic a few years ago. We had the van there, obviously, and we had parties of members coming in to have their lunch in the back. I put the table and chairs in the back of the van, and they were coming in turn and sitting down to eat.
Yeah, I think that would have worked this year. It really was. I mean, there were a couple of bands on in the concerts in the evening that I quite fancied watching, and then it got to about 4:00 in the afternoon. I thought, I'm not staying till 7 to stand in the rain and watch a band that I only quite want to watch. And obviously the balloon mass takeoff and stuff was all washed out, but the track action was
a shame.
Yeah. And so the next one after that, I guess, was Cotswold Alfa Day, which I would have loved to have been at, but had a family birthday. How did that go?
Yeah, I was delighted to go along to that one. I've not been to a CAD, as we call it, for some time. And Alex Payne, who's the secretary and kind of main organiser, had got the gang together there to turn it into a really super day. But the section there had the idea, well over 10 years ago now, of having an Alfa Day, a typical park up at a stately home, but doing a run in the morning, which turned into the Carrera Panoramico. So you
Giro Panoramico.
Which turned into the Giro Panoramico, which is always a really good fun thing, and it's extremely professional now with the tulip guides that are all printed. When I do tulip guides for runs in the East Midlands, I tend to pencil it in and photocopy it, whereas they've got all the graphics of the little indicators.
For those who haven't explored the Cotswold section website, one of the nice things they do is they put up the routes for previous Giros. So if anybody fancies either doing this year's route or one of the previous routes just as a Sunday afternoon drive, they're all available.
Yeah, which I fully recommend them. There was a restriction on numbers because of the venue's car parking area this year. So normally they have over 100 cars, but it was limited to 80, which sold out. A little bit showery, threatened, but there was still some superb cars along. Lots of 105 series, Giulietta Sprint, and several of the, what do we call them? You know, they're on the endangered species list now. Things like Alfa 155s and Craig Percy's 33 Permanent 4, one of 2 in the country registered. And it was thoroughly enjoyable. So a nice breakfast, cob start. It was clear everybody was it was the first time a lot of people in that section met up face to face in a long time. And of course, you get the people like me travelling from afar to join in. But there was a lovely atmosphere. And then the cars all set off on convoy. I did a part of the route, but diverted so I could get to Nick, who was there at the finish with the club van and everything. So I ended up at the Batsford Arboretum, which was the end point. Sadly, thanks to the wonderful British weather, the planned parking area was waterlogged. So people had moved into the upper level car park. But even that was quite scenic. There were some nice piles of Cotswold stone, weren't there, Nick, that we were thinking of putting in the back of the van at one point. But
certainly not, and the thought never crossed my mind, John. No.
So was that a former dry stone wall, or was it just a pile?
I think it's a quarry, to be honest. It looked like it. A bit dusty, but
it made I was talking to
really
the events guy when I got there in the morning, and he was explaining that we shouldn't use the grass. And I said, no, you don't have to ruin your grass, do you? And he genuinely didn't care about the grass. It's the cars I'm worried about.
Yeah, you're getting
quite unusual for a venue, because they're normally worried about their own land. But he wasn't worried about that at all. So.
Often it's the roots of the big trees as well you can't park on. But yeah.
No, he's just concerned about the cars.
But it worked out really well, and it was fun actually being at the finish, so we could all get cameras out and take pictures of the cars coming through, and again, chatting to people who'd done the full route that takes about 2 and a bit hours to do 60 odd miles. They'd had a great time. So that's a really good tip about looking at the route on the Cotswold section website, because it's something I may well go back to do. As it was for me, it was fun enough just driving down the Foss Way. I quite enjoyed that. Not done it in a while.
It's amazing how many of their routes, no matter what the start and end point are, have a Foss Way section to them. I think I've done two or three that have.
It's still a super road.
I think as we record this, it's just under a week since Festival Italia, which, as always, was a huge event. I'll talk about the track action later on.
David and Nick, in a long while,
in the middle of many
a lot more Ferraris and Lamborghinis this year than previously that I remember. Possibly buoyed by the good weather. Always helps for those people, doesn't it?
Yeah, I certainly thought it certainly seemed busy, because I went to the Festival Italia last year, and that was between bouts of COVID and lockdowns and so on. So it was strangely quiet and not very hugely populated last year. So this year did feel a bit more like 2019 and 2018 with car volumes. But that's a good point, actually, Nick. I thought there was slightly less baths and slightly more very expensive cars, I think. But we had a really good turnout. We had, we're limited, aren't we, to 50 cars in our spot, and
that's right.
We had more than that. So quite a few turned up, and we sort of spread out a bit as well into neighbouring plots. I was wandering around aimlessly with my camera and so on, and there was a lot of Alfas nearby with an A1 sticker in their window, which is our plot. So yeah, we took over a little bit, I think. But yeah, I thought it was a fabulous turnout. We had 3 SZs on our parking lot. Number of we only had one Montreal, but lots of other cars. One Stelvio, actually, in the whole of Festival Italia, there was one Stelvio that I spotted. So there may have been another one snuck in elsewhere. Lots of Giulia Quadrifolios, lots of really nice classics, a lot of Bertoni Giulias, a number of Spiders, a couple of 145s. So personally, I thought it was a fabulous show. It is always normally a good show with a really good turnout. But I think for Alfas this year, there seemed, to me anyway, a higher number of Alfa Romeos than there has been in the 5 or 6 years I've been going there regularly.
I think ours is certainly the biggest individual group there as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of little tiny groups have spotted up. I'm not quite sure what the criteria is for having a display area at Festival Italia, but there was a lot of little tiny gatherings of 3 and 5 cars and what have you, which I suppose is it's good to have that sort of diversity.
My big frustration was I didn't get to see much of the display area. But that was because they've added the HRDC Alfa Challenge, the Julius Thurgood series, to the racing program. So nearly all of the racing, it was basically, the racing was only Ferrari and Alfa. There was no Fiat or Abarth racing or anything else. And we had qualifying for the HRDC and the Alfa Championship in the morning with round 1 of the Alfa Championship. And then the HRDC race and the second race from the the Alfa Championship in the afternoon. So I was kept busy all day. And the grids for that were fantastic. I don't know what it is about Festival Italia, but as you know, David, it's not unusual for the Alfa Romeo Championship to have, 8, 9, 12 entries for some meetings. And it was 31 at Festival Italia.
Yeah, that's really good.
And they have for those who haven't been, they have a big gap between the modified and the Power Trophy cars and the Twin Spark Cup, and then a 10-second delay before they go off. And they were a bit concerned that with 31 cars and the gap, the people at the back of the Twin Spark Cup field wouldn't be able to see the lights go out because they'd be too far around clearways to actually see the gantry, which is great. So a couple of good races there. Nice to see our old friend Paul Plant, who we had on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, out in the first 940 series Giulietta that we've seen in the championship, which he's been developing with Barry McMahon, which look really good, look really promising. I think there are plans to build on the work that David and Davey Peddy did with the Mito to put together a 1.4 multi-air Giulietta and Mito class, which I think is a good development. And then in the HRDC, there was a huge grid as well, including, and I hesitate to mention him because I think I'm becoming a curse, Jeff Gordon, who was there in his Goodwood special Giulietta, and managed to break his drive shaft on the grid. So I only found out on Monday what had happened to him. Is I saw him go out on the green flag lap, and then he never came past again.
Oh no!
But apparently his race lasted no distance at all, which is a real shame. But again, cracking race. More GTV6 or what Alfetta. I think a lot of them are 2-litre Alfettas, but more Alfetta coupes racing than I think I've ever seen in one race, even in the kind of 80s. So really, really good day's racing. And I know Julius has been asked to bring the HRDC back again next year. So I think it's rapidly becoming a classic and modern Alfa race meet with an Italian car show alongside, which is great.
It is a clever idea, isn't it? Because often with our events, we get asked to put them on at race circuits, or it's suggested, but in general, the cost of hiring a circuit is immense, and we'd have to charge huge amounts, and there'd be a big risk of debt if the weather was foul. But with somebody else taking the risk, plus it's got a life of its own now. It's been running for a number of years, so people always know about it. In fact, we build other events like MITCAR around that date because we know it's going to be there. So it's great that that's really taken on.
And it's interesting how people think about it. And I know, again, talking to Jeff at the Silverstone Classic, he's racing a Triumph in the Classic Le Mans, and he knew that Triumph were at the Silverstone Classic. The Triumph Owners Club was there. Mm-hmm. So he asked them if they wanted to come down, and although he was there with an Alfa, come down to the paddock and have a chat about what he was doing. And the response he got from the Triumph Owners Club was, well, our members don't really watch the racing. It's just a meet for them. They go along and hang around the cars. And I think that's true of Festival Italia as well. I think there are people who go to Festival Italia who look at all the cars in the display area and the Italian stalls and things, but actually don't pay the racing much attention at all. Which is
funny when Jonathan Palmer arrived. Jonathan obviously owns that circuit and other ones. He arrived in his helicopter in the morning, and it couldn't land on his own helipad because it was full of people sitting in their chairs eating their sandwiches. It had to go and land over by the medical centre. Oops.
I'm sure he reacted very well to that.
The one thing I did spot there, Guy, just saying about who watches and who doesn't watch the racing, is at the times when the Alfa Championship and HRDC were racing, because Nick and I were largely up the top with the display cars, there was a bit of a wave of people heading towards the track at the times the Alphas were on. So I think there was an audience. You're right that a lot of people go for the car show rather than the track action, but that you could see a sort of a triggering event. 5 minutes before the Alfa racing, you see everybody leave our displays and head towards the fences. So there is a bit of an audience, I think.
Yeah, and I suspect it's a continuum, isn't it? There's people who only go for the racing, don't really care about the cars parked up.
Yeah.
People who only care about the cars, and people who are there for both.
I think we can agree it's nice to have a mix, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was really gutted for Stacey Dennis. She's the only woman racing in the Alfa Championship still. She has every time she goes to Brands Hatch, her little black and pink 147 loses a bolt or something epically fails and she spins off. So and that happened again. It was really sad to see that she spun off again, which is exactly what happened at the last Festival of Italia as well. So she doesn't have a lot of luck at that track.
She wasn't the only woman at this year's Festival of Italia, because Emma Kawaki, who's a ex-champion, ex-series champion, was there as well. And I think was quite close behind Stacey when she had her incident. So
Okay.
I think it could easily have ended up with both the women competitors in the kitty litter having taken each other out. But Stacey was at Snetterton when we were there with Colin the other week, which was her first time back in the car for a while. It's really good to see. And actually, the series has a really good record in terms of the number of women competitors they've had, and indeed the number of women champions they've had. And I think it'd be nice to see a few more racing regularly.
Well, funnily enough, I was chatting with the Mito crowd, obviously, and there was a really good turnout of Mitos, by the way. I should mention that. But I was speaking to a couple of them. They keep asking me, well, where's your meter, your race meter? Then when's that back on the track? And I keep saying, well, I haven't got anybody to drive it and I'm not allowed to, or else my wife will shoot me. So, but I got chatting with some young girls who turned up in their Mitos, and both of them were heading off from Festival Italia to Google about the ARDS test. And I said to them, look, if we can get a girl in that Mito, I will put that Mito on the track. So, we'll see what happens with that.
Brilliant.
No, that'd be really good. Wouldn't be a Alfa Romeo driver podcast if I didn't plug the virtual racing. I'd like to get a few more women in the virtual racing as well. Stacey nearly took part, and we've picked up a few new racers since National Alpha Day, since we had the truck there, including Rosie Hodson from I'm not quite sure where she's based, but she's the sister of Jack Hodson from the Kent and East Sussex section, who does a lot of 3D printing of obscure Alpha parts. She's doing really well. In the touring car championship, so that's great.
And I've been watching your because you're live streaming the virtual racing on YouTube and what have you. But I missed one the other day and rewatched it. There's a new commentator, isn't there? That wasn't what's his name, McRae, was it? It's a new guy.
Yeah. So Reeve Taylor came in as co-commentator alongside McRae, probably halfway through the previous season, and then McRae had other commitments, so he's now dropped out. And actually, Reeve has brought somebody else in from his University Motorsports Union as his co-commentator. So we're back at two now for most of the events.
And, it's really good.
They're a good team.
And to be honest, if anyone hasn't watched the virtual racing on either on live stream or watched it after the event on YouTube, the commentary adds something else. You're not just some nerd watching, sim racing. They're actually proper commentators, and it does add something to it. It's a really good experience. I easily wasted a couple of hours the other night watching it from start to finish. And there's nothing quite like live streaming, but because I missed that one, when I watched it back, in between the races, you can sort of fast forward when you're watching it again on YouTube, and the commentators kick back in and you're away. So I'm really enjoying it at the moment as a non-participant, but as a viewer of it, it's really good fun.
Well, the most recent single-seater race was an absolute cracker at Spa, and I say that not just because I came second in class in race 2, which is about 9th overall, I think. No, really, really, really good racing at the moment. Moving on from racing, the next event chronologically was MITCAR. Now, we did try to come up with a slick way to edit this in, but you all would have noticed anyway. We recorded the main part of this episode a couple of days before the event for release about a week afterwards, but we really wanted to cover it in the podcast. So we broke out the field recording gear, found a suitable studio location, recorded a new bit on site, and then we've clumsily shoehorned it in here. I'm actually in the club van with John Griffiths, and we're just in the process of packing up from MITCAR. So I thought we'd take the opportunity to just talk about how today went.
Yeah, very much so. And if you can hear a bit of rain on the van, then sorry, but thankfully it all kept off until just after we've done the awards, which is brilliant.
I think we had a brief shower halfway through the day because I put my roof down briefly.
Yeah.
And it literally just finished folding down and it started raining, so I put it back up again.
Yeah, good move. But no, sadly, a lot of the spiders arrived with hoods up, but never mind. A couple of hardy souls, like Phil Gotts, who'd come over from East Anglia, driven all the way with his hood down. But he's always a brave soul. But it was brilliant to see them all come out, to be honest, because they were forecasting cats and dogs, and actually, for a period, we almost had the sun out, which was great. So a lot of people enjoyed looking around the long lines of cars of all shapes and sizes. It was terrific.
And I mean, we talked about it earlier with Festival Italia, but it is nice to not just have the Alfas here and have some of the Italian fellow travellers here as well.
Absolutely, and that's why, although we're blessed with some super Auto Italia events around the country, it's why my good friend Brian Alexander, back in 2001, decided in the Midlands we should set up yet another Italian event, but let's have it varied for everybody, and it's been terrific ever since. Obviously, we had to miss it last year. This year, COVID on and off at the start, we were struggling over venues, but the guys here at the British Motor Museum have been terrific. And as somebody said to me, they're particularly good because they're volunteers and they enjoy doing it. They enjoy helping out, really, because they're car fans themselves, and you really notice it. So they were super to deal with and just made it all so easy. They took all the ticketing system, they took the tickets at the gate, directed down, and then our guys from the AROC East Midlands could, do the directing, handing out programmes and welcome people in. And it's been brilliant to see such a host of Alfa Romeos, but also all the other marques this year, and that's the best bit.
Yeah, and it's what, just over 50-50.
Yeah, I think the split, Alfa versus
everything else,
and they had 96 Abarths of different shapes and sizes, boosted now with the 124 Abarth Spider, which has become, you can see, quite popular with fanatics. If it was only an Alfa itself. But no, it's lovely to see those. So that was tremendous, and they reckon that's their biggest gathering of Abarths together in a very long time. So big thanks to Colin Rea in particular from the Abarth Owners Club for helping organise that, along with the Abarth East Midlands guys. They're really, really good. And Fiat's were tremendous as well.
Yeah, and I guess if you cheat a little bit and add the Fiat 124 Spiders in,
that
takes the Abarth-ish cars over well over 100.
But yeah, we had Jill and Bob with the Fiat Motor Club had got some beautiful classics along. So we had X19s and Strada Abarths, you name it, and some real rarities. The Panda 4x4s they enjoy doing up, and there was one car that just missed out on an award, which was a Fiat 127, a blue one that did 24,000 miles. I've not seen one in ages. Apparently rescued from a field, but it was solid original panels. Unbelievable.
Well, a car I lusted after a long time ago was the Tipo 16 Valvolet.
Oh yeah,
I haven't seen one of those for a long time. In fact, I'm sure I read somewhere that there weren't any left, but there was one here.
There was nice. Yeah, I saw that when it rolled in. That was tremendous. I think with the weather, unfortunately, we missed out on a few of the exotics, but we had a lovely line of Maseratis. Terrific cars there. I should mention my pal from the Alfa Club, T. Lum, who won the Best Exotic prize with his Maserati Grand Sport MC Stradale. Let's get that one right. A real rarity, gorgeous black car, and it sounds tremendous too.
Of course, his Quadrifoglio, Stelvio. Featured in the magazine.
It did, it did. So yeah, super guy. Lovely to see that, and some proper rarities in there. More Lancias than we've seen in some time. Quite a lot of rebadged Deltas and Ypsilons, but super to see a couple of Beta Spiders and one Monte Carlo, which I've not seen in some time. But it's all that variety and mixture.
And I know I shouldn't say this as a dyed-in-the-wool fisty, but it's actually nice to see a Beta Monte Carlo with a Lancia engine in rather than a Busso.
Yeah, it's not been changed. Yeah, that was great. Really liked that one. I should mention the Italian Rarity Award. We were very tempted to give it to a real old car, but there was an immaculate, rather plain-looking Fiat Mireia Saloon, an R-Reg that I've not seen in ages. So us organisers chose that one for the Italian Rarity this year, although there were some super other things. And the other one that tickled us was we saw him driving down the hill to the gate, and we thought he got the wrong show. It was a brown Mini, but it turned out when we looked at it, of course, it was an Innocenti Mini that was built in Italy. So that one ended up winning the special award, as we call it. So that was a bit of fun, certainly at the British Motor Museum.
It was nice spread of cars too, I mean, particularly on the Alfa side. Any particular things that stood out for you other than the prize winners?
Yeah, a pair of fabulous Giulietta Sprints. The overall winner, public vote winner for the camshaft trophy that we've named in honour now of Brian Alexander, who passed away a couple of years ago, was won by the Giulietta Sprint. Normale, yeah, that's right. Then we had a pair of Arnas. Well, one of them was a Nissan Cherry Europe. Both of them have been at the hands of Ian Jeffcott, but the car that won the, let me get it right here, the organiser's choice was Ian Jeffcott's own Alfa Arna that he's restored from scratch. It was going to be white, but Dave Roberts has got a beautiful white one that he's recently restored, so he's kept it in the original bright green metallic, which looks superb. I mean, those cars are crazy.
Yeah.
But apparently he's going to sell it, so that could be tempting for somebody if they fancy all the power of a 1.2 SL Arna. But it looks brand new.
I think it was the first time I'd seen in the engine bay of an Arna.
Yeah.
And it was quite interesting to see what would have been the second bulkhead in a Sud or a 33. Yeah. Is kind of more like a strut brace in the
It is, yeah. You can see how they kind of adapted it. But it's tremendous. I mean, where he gets the bits from, I don't know. I guess you can get some Alfa Sud parts relatively easily, but trying to get body panels must be about impossible.
Well, I guess the body panels are Nissan Cherry body panels.
Well, they are, yeah. So. If you can get them, and and then he does a degree of fabrication of the bits that he's stuck for, and happily the donor models tend to have quite tidy interiors, which must be a complete impossibility to get those. Yeah. But no, that was particularly great. Also really pleased to see some modified Alfas along. We always love the modified Mitos, as we've talked about in the past. I think after the National Alfa Day one, great to see some of those along again. And Dharmesh Patel from the East Midlands section had brought his tremendous 159 estate that I can just see through the windows. Car. That he's put a special Julia-esque body kit on, but it kind of works, and it's wrapped in an amazing kind of rose red colour. That's terrific. And there was a beautiful grey Brera with gold alloys as well, subtly lowered. But it's great to see those coming along as well. It really is.
It was kind of greeny coloured 147 GTA as well, which I've not seen before.
Yeah, that's right. That's an original colour, but again, subtle modifications. And that was going next to Paul Curry's, kind of well known in AROC circles, his very modified red 147 GTA. So it's fab to see those cars, it really is. And we had a reasonable number of classics along the front row. I think those were the ones that were probably, I know were defeated by the weather forecast. Yeah. So a lot of, again, club members kept the classic in the garage, unfortunately, and hopefully for the events later this year they'll be bringing those out.
And we talked about the split between the Alfas and the non-Alfas. In terms of total numbers?
Yeah, we've just got the count in from the Sundog guys that do the photographs, and it was just under 400.
Right.
And we can add on to that all the visitors that are here as well in the non-Italians. But that was terrific given the forecast. And as you say, a nice 50-50 split, so a proper old mix of Alfas and non-Alfas. Making it a rather super day all round, and thank goodness that rain held off until we'd done the awards.
And it was literally the moment the awards were finished, the heavens opened.
Exactly. So again, that was all sponsored by Research Garage. Great to see Saber Ali, club member along, who's been on a podcast as well, bringing a super array of cars. Another green Quadrifoglio Giulia, that colour's amazing. And he brought the Stelvio Formula 1 edition, I think they call them, Quadrifoglio.
Alfa Romeo Racing Edition.
That's it, Racing Edition, that's it. Yeah, the beautiful white with red on top, and it's got the yellow banded Pirelli tyres on it that always catches the eye, Akrapovic exhaust. Fabulous thing, that. And of course we've got a few Fiat 500Es here today, including Duncan Langford from the board, who's got one of those.
Who I believe has learned something useful today, which is that you can't charge it with the bonnet open.
Oh, really?
Which he learned after trying to spend an hour charging it with the bonnet open.
Oh, no. Well, he's learned now, but he reckoned he'd still got a good 100 miles range in it, having driven down here 55 or something, so that's pretty decent. And thankfully at the British Motor Museum there's some free charge points anyway, so they were okay. Maybe we'll see more of those in the future, but certainly they're quite surprising to drive. I know Dave Atkins, club member, was scooting around in early this morning. He was a helper driving the research garage one, and he was stunned by its performance off the line.
I was lucky enough to be at the SMMT test day at Millbrook, and I did the Alpine route, and I jumped straight from a 595 Competizione into a 500e. Yeah, and it's just phenomenal. I mean, there's not many long straight bits on the Alpine course, so there are a couple of bits where you started to feel that it didn't have the legs that the Competizione did. Yeah, the top but the acceleration, I mean, the powering out of corners and stuff, is very impressive.
Just pushes you, doesn't it? It's tremendous. Yeah.
So a successful day all in all.
Definitely.
I guess as next year. Planning already started?
It has. We penciled in Kedleston Hall for this year, but the COVID restrictions meant that they couldn't take us on at that National Trust premises. But we're hoping to do that, so it would be a change back to a traditional country house event next year. But Gaydon's brilliant, and it's waterproof. That's the best thing with the hard standing and all the indoor attractions. But Kedleston Hall in August is what we're aiming at. They were all geared up for us, and fingers crossed that's what we can do next year.
Brilliant. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be great.
Thanks, John. So we talked about events that have happened, and in a minute we're going to talk about a couple of the events that are coming up. This podcast will have been released halfway through another event, Southwest Alfa Day, so we can't tell you what you've got to look forward to because it's happening now, and we can't tell you how good it was because it's still happening now. But what was planned, Nick?
I can tell you it was a very good day.
I thought it was outstanding.
Yes, we're at the Helicopter Museum at Weston-super-Mare this year, Southwest Alfa Day, which sounds like a fascinating place. It's got over 100 helicopters, supposed to be the largest dedicated helicopter museum in the world. So, we'll see. Watch this space, and we'll let you know what happened.
It will have been very good.
Yes,
I'm sure it will.
Superb.
So, what's coming up next then? I think the next thing is probably actually the Autumn Alfa Day, as it is now, Spring Alfa Day as was. What have we got planned for that?
Right. That's right. So we're back to the wonderful Yorkshire Wildlife Park where we were last in 2017. I remember the 2017 one so well because it was the first time that people with Julias that year could really get together when they'd been delivered, and there was a nice lineup of those. That, of course, that was held in April back in 2017, and it was the Spring Alfa Day. So obviously because of COVID, we had to move it back this year. But we are in a new area. It's Nick and I are actually doing proper scouting on it in the next couple of days' time. And we'll be sorting out the various layouts and so on. So it's a new area near what was referred to as the old entrance, because the site's had gigantic development. I was last there as a visitor in April just to see animals with the family, and I was blown away. Brand new entrance on the other side of the site, which we won't be using, is enormous, and they've built a whole host of buildings, lecture rooms, shops, video theatres, you name it, and throughout a hugely extended area of park where there's converted wetlands and various gigantic animal enclosures. So all the best animal stuff is still there and been further developed. Lots of eateries within the park, and we're near the old entrance that has cafes and so on, near the meerkats and all the good old stuff like that too. So as a family venue, it's really excellent, and we're going to build on that by having a really great display of Alfas. We've not planned quite yet as to how to arrange it. My feeling is we've done so much model parking this year at events, we may have a bit more of a more basic split of old and new, so you can walk along a line of cars and enjoy seeing different things. However, if we've got some registrars there who are keen to group the cars, of course we'll accommodate that. And we'll have some light-hearted competition as well for cars of the day, for trophies and so on. So it'll be a nice, relaxing family day out. That's the plan. with some lovely cars to see and a great venue to enjoy. So your ticket gets you into the entire facility. We've made sure, because of some limited parking, we've ensured that it's advance ticket only. So please, if you're coming, make sure you buy it. And there's a substantial discount on admission price. I don't know if Nick, have you got those prices in front of you? I can't remember.
I have, John. It's their tariff on the gate for the public is £22 for an adult. We're charging Rock members £16.50.
There you go.
Almost worth buying an Alfa just to get in.
It is, yeah.
Yes.
Maybe people will do that. But no, it's a healthy saving, and there's various other tickets based around that, and that's the basic adult price.
Yeah.
But no, it should be a super day out, really, and hopefully we'll have a bit of a late summer, and we'll have some decent weather to go with it. But in Yorkshire, it's probably best to pack absolutely everything in the boot anyway. It's not far from where my son lives, incidentally, and put it this way, he never has to water his garden.
Indian summer Alfa day we're after.
Yeah. I was just wondering whether to bring my my long sports lenses to take into the wildlife park. Do we know what time the wildlife park closes?
It's 4 o'clock is the last entry.
Right.
Last entry, so yeah, you can you can carry on after that. Yeah,
might get a couple of hours in after the show.
It's
definitely
do
take them.
It's really worth it. Yeah.
The tiger enclosure is terrific. They tend to be a little far away. The lions normally always asleep, but you can get very close to them. And my favourite's the polar bears that are just incredible. I've not seen one since being a little boy, and gosh, they take your breath away with the scale of the things. And that's a super enclosure. But yeah, long lens nonetheless helps. I actually got some half decent shots just on my camera phone, but it's really, really terrific venue from that angle.
A couple of great points of the Yorkshire Wildlife Park. Firstly, let's be honest, a lot of us older blokes go to Alfa shows, park up and spend the day nattering with each other about cars.
Don't know what you mean.
A site like Yorkshire Wildlife Park makes it a really, really good family outing. So, we can take our families, kids, grandkids and what have you. You can still do the car show thing, and then you can disappear off into the wildlife park. But the flip side of that, and I'm going to sound proper nerdy now, is I remember back in 2017, because a lot of people went into the park, you get much better photos of the Alfa Romeos because there's not so many people around.
That's a very good point.
It's swings and roundabouts, I think. But you're right about the polar bears. They were, I'm assuming they're the same characters now, but a few years ago when we were there, there was a couple of polar bears literally playing football. And I've never seen anything like it in my life. So there's certainly, it's worth taking your camera, I think, for the animals there.
Brilliant. So we talked about a lot of our own events. There's another event that we always attend, which is hugely popular, usually around about the 1st of May, back end of April, beginning of May, moved to October for all the usual reasons this year, which is Auto Italia at Brooklands. So what's our presence looking like there, Nick?
Bigger than usual, I believe, with the parking area we normally have. Michael Ward has already said that they've moved the baths out of there this year, so we've got that whole area, and it's, those that have been know it's full sort of half an hour after the gates open normally, and the Alfas are then sent to the overflow parking. So it's it's enormous. Again, we've got our own separate entrance through the heights again this year, so hopefully that will help alleviate the queues. And again, it's ticket only, so again that will help alleviate people waiting.
And those tickets
overheating.
Those tickets are from the Brooklands Museum itself.
That's right, they are. Yeah.
And it's again, given the time of year and the British weather, the parking's all hard standing, so no worries about either getting mud on your car or sinking into it.
And it's quite well drained with the banking, isn't it?
Yeah. That's certainly helpful.
Yeah, although I think it drains down into our car park, doesn't it? From the
this is true. I wasn't going to mention that.
Bring your wellies anyway. Yeah. Hopefully, again, we're going to be in for an Indian summer. Let's see.
Again, it's another one of those events like Festival Italia, where if what you're there to see is the Alfas, then there's loads of them. But if you have a broader interest in Italian cars, MITCAR too, I guess. There's a fantastic range of cars, some with slightly tenuous links to Italy, but basically anything that has any connection with Italy is welcome at Brooklands for that event.
And there's always some interesting sounds there as well, isn't there?
Is there?
Yes, the engines and the,
Oh.
the beast of Turin and things I was thinking of.
The beast
Yes.
of Turin. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yes.
How many? Is that 11 litres? I think. I
No,
can't
it's,
remember
it's
now.
20.
More,
22 or something, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
it's,
it.
it's 7 litre cylinders, I think.
That's it. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Superb.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So that's almost all for this episode, except to thank you for your continuing support. A couple of days ago, one of you was responsible for our 10,000th download since we started the podcast last May. So the next 10,000. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time, as always, with a surprise guest. And believe me, with the summer holidays and everything else getting in the way, it'll be as much of a surprise to me as it is to you. Episode 40 will be available to download from 1:30 p.m. on Sunday the 12th of September, halfway through Autumn Alpha Day this time, from Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, Google Podcasts and dozens of other places, including the club website. Until then, stay safe.